Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning. My name is Abdul Qayyum bin Muhammad Abdullah. My nomenclature is 11DK19F1031. I'm from class DK4B and my lecturer name is Puan Suzana Wati binti Adnan. Today I want to do a simulation for the Flakiness and Elongation test. So, let's start the simulation. Sebelum kita memulakan eksperimen, kita perlu pakai personal protection equipment iaitu PPE untuk keselamatan diri. Contoh PPE adalah eye protection, ear protection, hand protection, foot protection, body protection, head protection and respirator protection iaitu face mask. Flakiness and Elongation Index Test. Welcome to Highway Engineering Laboratory. This video describes step-by-step procedure to conduct Flakiness Index and Elongation Index Test for aggregate. The Flakiness Index and Elongation Index Test for aggregate are conducted using BS 812 Part 1. In this video, the Flakiness Index Test will be described followed by Elongation Index Test respectively. Flakiness Index Test. The aggregate particle is conducted flex its thickness is less than 0.6 times that means severe size of size is fraction. Flaking aggregate is not desired to will the improved orientation of aggregate particle during mix and break during compare of load carrying capacity of alpha mix. Objective: to determine the flakiness index of aggregate sample. The flakiness index test requires follow apparatus: thickness gauge, BS test sieve, machine of shaker, tray, balance. Procedure: intentionally weight each other individual sieve size using the analysis. Secure a recipient sample of aggregate and put into the sieve. Conduct sieve analysis 2 kg aggregate sample and using the select BS test sieve size. Describe all aggregate 63.0 mm BS and aggregate past the 6.30 ms BS test sieve. Weight each individual size, retires and other the 63 ms BS test sieve and store the separate tray with this size mark on the tray. So we separate size by size on the tray. Sum the mass of the all size frequency M1. Calculate the individual percent retile aggregate of each of the variant sieve. Describe all agree with the mass of 5% or less of mass M1. Record the mass remain M2, which is the total weight of the aggregate including the size of 5% of weight. Using the gauge, select the thickness, gauge and size fraction under the test and gauge each particle separate by hand. Reference Table 1 Highway Laboratory Test Manual. So test the aggregate. Combine all weight of the participants passed in the gauge. Calculate the flakiness index and flakiness index will be reported to the nearest whole number. Elongation Index Test. The aggregate participant is conducted elongation in length of 1.8 times the mean dimension length of the size frequency. Elongation is not the will the improved orientation of aggregate participant during mix and break during compaction. Reduce the strength of the alpha mix. Objective: to determine the elongation index of aggregate sample, and this is the apparatus for elongation index. Length gauge, BLTS receiver, machine shaker, tray, and balance. Procedure. We'll weight each other individual civil size using the analysis. Sequence the repair sample of aggregate, and we put in the civil aggregate. Conduct the analysis of 2 kg aggregate sample using the select BS test civil size. Describe all aggressive 0.15.0 MSBS and pass the aggregate the 6.30 BS to size civil, which individual size, and take the all 50 MSBS in size civil and storage the separate tray with their own tray on with size. And we separate using the size by size in the tray. Sum the mass of all fractions M1. Calculate the individual percent agreed of the residual Cs. Discrete all agreed with the mass in the 5% and less of the mass M1. Record the mass remain M2. Using the gauge, select the length gauge, improve the size frequency under test, and gauge participants separate by hand. Reference the table 2 of Highway Laboratory Test Manual. So this is a table. So we use the length gauge for aggregate, for elongation aggregate. After that, we take the weight. Combine all weight of elongation participant, gauge M3, calculate the elongation index. The elongation index should be report the nearest whole number. So itu saja untuk video kali ini. Sekian, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum.